It's Friday, December 15th, 2023. Start off with a much more normally sped, what do you call it, chill segment, unlike the last show where I blew through it in about 3 seconds. So if you go to patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare, you can support the show on that platform there. If you go to our show homepage, you will see an array of vertically laid out squares with rounded corners. Various things will be within those squares. There's a PayPal logo if you want to use that. There is a little book with a bookmark that will take you to Lando's Amazon author page. There is a little skull that will take you to my art links. And there is a link to our YouTube channel. And if you go to that link, you will see that I have posted a video game that I've been playing, that I've been having a lot of fun with. A $4 game, $4. Windows only, I believe, but a game that is worth playing. Worth more. I would have been happy with this game if I'd paid $10 for it. It's called The Exit 8. It is, I believe, a Japanese game, but it is in English. But it's based on, I don't know if the developer is Japanese or not, but it is a Japanese subway repetitive observation horror game. Technically, I wouldn't even really call it a horror game. So the game itself, to lay it out in very simple terms, it's very, very easy to understand once you play it once or twice. Essentially,
it is creepy. I'm looking at the graphics for it. Yeah, there is a creepiness about it.
Well, it's based on the idea of liminal spaces, which is ordinary spaces that become unsettling when they are just laid out starkly, when there's nothing in them but the spaces themselves. But the game is, you're basically walking down a hallway in a Japanese subway station, and you go down the same, I think it's three, a short hallway, a long hallway, a short hallway. Maybe it's two short hallways. But you go down this very, very defined space. And you have to repeat it 8 times. And if you repeat it 8 times and there are no anomalies, then you leave the station, you win. Now, some people have beaten it inside of 20 minutes. It took me about an hour. But it's a game I'll replay. And the thing is, it's not really a horror game, but it does not, there's no jump scares, or at least I haven't encountered one. I believe there are 24 total anomalies, if I remember correctly. I have found 15 of them so far, and none of them were jump scares in the sense that you would think. Only one kind of was, because it's very quiet in the game, and there was a sound of a door being unlocked, and it spooked me. So, because it was very quiet, but nothing jumps up on the screen, at least so far. There's no, goblin that jumps up and shrieks at you, anything like that. At one point, the lights went off, and that threw me, because you just hear the lights click off, and then everything goes dark. So, it does, in that sense, there are those.
What are you supposed to do with these anomalies?
As soon as you see them, you're supposed to turn around and run backwards, but run back to where you came from. And then basically the hallway inverts, and then you see, and so there's a sign that's always, and so basically, so let's say, okay, you start at 0, you go down the hallway and you come into the main room and you see that something looks off. You turn around, you go back, and then the sign is there and you just keep going forward. It's like it flips the whole thing around, but now it will say number 1 and you've passed. And you do that until you do it 8 times. And then at the end of the 8th hallway, assuming there are no anomalies, you go up the stairs and you win. That's it. That's all there is to it. There's no combat. There's nothing else in the game except this same hallway and a NPC who walks down the hallway. And that's all there is to it. And so it becomes a memory game. Really what you're doing is you're memorizing the hallway. When you watch these videos, I will start to get a pattern where as soon as I get to the main hallway, you'll hear me say, okay, 3 panels on the ceiling, 2 security cameras, 2 vents, 3 doors, red light, no smoking sign. And that's all the landmarks of what I know foundationally are supposed to be there. And that's all the game is. It's just going around in the same loop and trying to identify anything that's off. And it's really fun. For $4, it's a blast. Because I actually will at some point, I'll not play it for a while and then play it again. The only thing about it that at some point I will probably have to look something up is I am not good at memorizing Japanese characters. I can't. So some of the posters have a lot of Japanese writing on them. And it's possible in some of the ones where there's times where I don't know what I missed. There's times where I think maybe I saw something and I keep going. And then when it resets, I go, okay, maybe there was something there. Because literally it could be at one point when I was walking down, I didn't look down. And you know how in subway stations they have that yellow rubber thing, like the anti-skid rubber strip that's... I didn't look at that until I was too far. And then I realized, I think it was different. I think the pattern had changed. And so something like that, you go, okay, I missed it.
What's the reaction time they give you?
I don't know. I mean, you hear clicks every so often, so I think there are distance markers. So you can go a little ways, but most of them you will notice immediately. One time, although there was one funny one, there's a poster that is on the left wall, and this is a hint for people, if you even encounter it, where it's a pair of eyes, and it says security cameras in operation. It has Japanese writing. Mm. And I would look at it, and one time, one of the eyes was closed. As soon as I saw that, I turned around and went back. Then another time, I was walking, and then the thing was coming down the hallway following me on the left. I could see it. It was like next to me, and I went, oh, okay, turned around and ran. Another time, I came around the hallway, and in a very similar style to The Shining, there were 2 men just standing there, and I went, nope, turned around and ran the other way. So, and like I said, I'm recording all these because it is a blast. It is very fun. But that's the kind of thing. So the reaction time, I would say you probably have it's tough to define the space, but you probably have a quarter of a hallway worth of going forward and backwards. So, you definitely, because when that poster had been following me at least a little ways when I noticed it and then turned around and went back. So it's not instant. It's not if you don't see it right away.
The poster was following you down the wall.
It slid down the wall next to me, and I noticed it as I got to the end of the hallway. I saw that it was there. So there's that. And some things are much more static. There was one time I came around, and there were a bunch of signs that were on the floor repeating, and I could tell that right away. Then there was one where I was going down, and I suddenly heard water. And I mean, it was loud, like water was flooding into the thing. So I started running, and I turned around and I saw the water, and I kept running. And unfortunately in that one, I think I ran too far, and then I reset it back to 0 because I thought the water was going to chase me. I really didn't know what was going to happen. So I wasn't sure. I don't know if you can actually die in it. I don't know if the water had touched me, if something would have happened. I actually probably, once I clear all the anomalies, I'll probably play it and start seeing what happens if you just keep going with the anomalies in place. Does something happen? But at least in terms of the anomaly appearances, like I said, the water one, you could hear it suddenly just rushing at you. And so that was kind of like, uh-oh. And then when the lights went off, that was scary because I just didn't like it because there was because when you're focusing so much on everything you're looking at, that's what creates the tension because you lock into it. So it's very immersive without having to be realistic at all because you're paying attention to everything. And so as soon as one thing shifts out of the way, it freaks you out. It offsets things. So I would play sequels upon sequels upon sequels to this game. If they keep making new versions where they change the anomalies, I'd play it forever. It's great. It's a blast because it's very simple. It's very simple. And I think I played it for about 30 minutes the first time in that first recording, or 20 something minutes, 30 minutes, and I didn't beat it. And I went, okay, I'm going to play it again later. And I didn't care. Because, there's no progression to save. There's nothing to worry about.
Honestly,
then I beat it the second time.
It's kind of like an old arcade game in that respect.
Sort of.
There's no saving. It's just, play it through.
Right. Yeah, that's correct. It's just one, and that's what makes it the entertaining part is it doesn't rely, at least as far as I can tell, there's no reliance on, okay, how Twitch shooters, well, if you're not fast enough, the worst game in the world to play. If you don't like doing memory games or puzzle games, don't even bother. That's what it is. It's a memory puzzle game. It's a game that tests your ability to observe and identify differences. And if that sounds miserable, then there's no point. But honestly, it's a very simple but very effective $4 game.
But I want to shoot the anomalies. Why can't I just shoot the anomalies?
Well, that's the thing is there is no combat. And then the other thing is the guy who walks down the hallway, I kept waiting for him to there was one time where he was walking very quick, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, got it, and I booked it the other way because he was moving at twice his normal speed. And then another time he was walking normally, but his face was all bandaged up, and I went, and I turned around and ran away. So, but at no point is he ever threatening. Oh, and then one time he's looking at you as he's walking, which he almost never, well, no, not almost, he never does that. And as soon as I saw that, I went, and I ran away. So it's a game that encourages you to run away. Running away is the correct response.
It's interesting because it kind of lends itself to create your own narrative.
It does, yeah. There is no story whatsoever to it, no nothing. It has destinations on the opening graphics, so I suppose there may be a real station at the location it's depicting, but there's no other indicator of it. There's just happen to be 5 names of what I assume are cities or provinces. I think one of them I recognize, so I think they're real. So it may very well be based on a real subway location. But honestly, you don't have to do a lot. You just have to have a bunch of tiles and signs. And that's all there is. But literally there's one sign where it's for a dog grooming place. And I had to look, okay, the dog's all facing the right ways. Okay, great. Are the dates right? The time's right? I don't know if I need to know all those details or not. It's tough to say because most of the anomalies.
Yeah, you don't know how detailed they're going to get with you.
Yeah, because the anomalies that I've seen are any type of the words. There was no words. Everything has either been upside down or there's been movement or there's been something like the lights going off. Well, that's an easy one. Then one time the fluorescent lights, which are normally perfectly straight, were off. They were not straight. That's all I needed to see. Turn around, go back the other way. There you go. That's it. So I did read that some of the things are very subtle. And so far, I have missed things where I thought I didn't. So maybe these are literal characters that are different. But everything was, I didn't feel like any of the anomalies I detected were cheap. I think that's the way to put it. There was nothing where I went, okay, wait a minute.
Okay, so yeah, so you were like, okay, that's
yeah, because let's say there's probably
nothing like that.
In that subway tunnel, there are probably 1,000 subway tiles. It's not like one was 5% darker than all the others and you were expected to see it. Then I would say, okay, that's a cheap shot. That nobody's going to see that. But for example, one time I came around and one of the security cameras had a bright red light on that it's never had before. You will pick that up if you're looking at everything. You'll see that red light was not there. You turn around, you walk back. That's it. But yeah, it's not like if your footsteps echo differently. Oh, you missed it. I have not encountered anything like that. There were definitely things that were easier to spot than others, like walking around the corner and seeing 2 men standing there staring at you. That's pretty easy, as opposed to there's a poster with a woman on it, and the one time her face was a little bit melted, that was horror-ish, but not like blood gushing out of her face or anything like that. So, and then I kept waiting. Then, like you said about building the narrative, the other fun part was then I'm like, okay, is the guy going to come around the corner and his torso will be turned around and he's walking backwards? Will he come around and he'll have no legs? Will his head be floating? Will his head, will he do a large march from Pee-wee and go, wah, at you or whatever? I don't know. I was literally looking, okay, does he have a cell phone in his left hand? Yes. Does he have a briefcase in his right hand? Yes. Does he have socks on? No. Good. Because he never has socks on. I don't know whether he will or not. I don't know if it's that subtle or not. Nothing like that seems to have happened. But
I wonder if it's a random. It's a random generator. I wonder if it.
Well, there's a set number of anomalies because you get a counter after you beat it, and there's a sign at the beginning that says.
Yeah, so it's
yes.
It is.
I think it's 24.
Finite. Yeah.
Yes.
Finite.
So
it's finite.
It's
not finite.
Yeah. Oh, it's the opposite of infinite. Yeah, there is definitely now whether those have variations or not, I don't know. So the poster moving, I don't know if the poster could move the opposite way. And so that might be random so that you don't always see it move the same way at the same time. Maybe the water comes at a different point in the tunnel, but it's always going to be water rushing type of thing. So yeah, there does seem to be, because I did read that there is, if you really get stuck there, people have documented how to beat it so that you will know what you're missing. And like I said, if it is in fact the Japanese characters, I will probably at some point, because there's an achievement for seeing all the anomalies, but just to be able to beat it, I will probably have to look up. I'm going to guess I'll get down to 2 or 3, and I will not be able to. If they are the characters, I won't be able to see them. I've tried to memorize them. My brain's just not good at that type of stuff.
You just need to write. Honestly, you just need Post-it notes and write them down.
Yeah, I could do that, or I could just keep a tab open with what the characters are that change. Just keep an eye on them. That's all. Because there's a lot of them. If I was going to post, I would have to learn how to write Japanese a little bit. Because there's one poster, and you'll hear me if you watch the videos. There's one poster I look at, and I'm like, yeah, if there's something different on there, forget it. I'm never going to see it. Because not only is it filled with Japanese writing, but it's also it's almost like a little depiction of musical chairs. So there's all these little people, and they're all in different positions. And if like one of their shirts is a different color, I'm never going to see it. Then there was one. This is what's fun about it. As I fooled myself into thinking that there's one poster that has a woman's eyes, and the top image is in color, and it's the same image underneath in black and white. At least that's what I thought. And then one time I saw the black and white one, and the eye was brown, and I went, oh, that's got color. That's wrong. And then I realized, oh, no, it always had color. I just thought it was black and white because I was looking at so many things that because the majority of it's in black and white, everything but what do you call it when it's around the iris? Whatever the color part of your eye is, whatever that is.
It's not the pupil, is the black part.
Yeah, whatever it is. Anyway, the black part. Oh yeah, so no, it is the iris then. The black part's the pupil.
Yeah.
Right. So then the iris. I had convinced myself that I saw the iris as black and white when in fact it was never black and white, but I just saw it that way because I was looking at 80 things at once. So that's kind of fun when you realize, oh, I was mentally overwriting what was actually there.
Yeah, sometimes we can create our own problems.
And that's what I did. Yeah. And that's what I mean about there may be things where I'm thinking I'm seeing them one way and I'm actually not. So, like I said, this is a far longer review than I thought I would be giving for a, a $4 game. But I thought it was great.
Just because a game is cheap
it's a lot of fun.
Mean it's cheap. Like there can be a lot more going on than that. So
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So The Exit 8. I have a link to it in the show notes.
No, I have
for the Steam page.
I have some weird biology stuff, weird biology science to bring to the show tonight, which is not normally our area. But a while back, I was talking about the plastics. Now the plastics are getting into the bloodstream, and I've done more research on that, and it is a major fucking problem, right? We are living in a very polluted time. We don't realize it because it's the whole, it's that whole the I don't know if it's a joke, but I guess the metaphor. The frog doesn't know that the pot is getting hotter and hotter, right? You don't realize how polluted your environment is to some degree, and essentially I was talking about how a lot of the clothing now is got a lot of polyesters and plastics in them, and that they've discovered that we're actually absorbing the plastics through the skin, which is not a good thing. But in a bit of good news, I have bits of like good and bad news. They have recently done a study where they've discovered that so when you eat any food that is wrapped in plastic has basically plastics shed microplastics, right? So you get these things you get them in your stomach essentially. And what they have discovered is that these plastics in your stomach can actually cause inflammation. They can cause your stomach to react. They've actually found that people with Crohn's disease very often have like twice the number of microplastics that other people do, as well as irritable bowel syndrome, right? Not enough to say direct cause, but it's becoming a very, very peculiar correlation. So what they've recently discovered, though, which is a bit of good news, is that apparently certain probiotics appear to mitigate the inflammation that these microplastics cause in your stomach and actually help break them down and kind of get them out of there. Right? So, I mean, honestly, it's probably the only good news I've found in this. But apparently, the probiotics that you find in kind of yogurt, as well as the probiotics that you find in fermented foods like pickles or kimchi, things like that, they appear to, what they say is like, to mitigate the inflammation by 90%. So this isn't a small amount. This isn't like a slight correlation. 90% which is amazing. So if you are worried about these things, because I mean, listen, these plastics are getting in through our skin and they're getting in through into our stomachs, and it, you know, the more we learn about the fascinating sort of horticulture of the bacteria in the stomach, the more we realize that it affects everything in your body. I mean, there's a huge area of study now between how the gut bacteria affects the way you think, right? You know, we think of ourselves as individuals, but at times it's good to think of yourself as a host for a massive city of various bacteria and organisms.
Oh, that's true.
So, yeah. So I thought that was a bit of good news, this idea that, you know, if you try to get more yogurt or fermented foods into your diet, don't just drink a ton. Although they never mentioned that in the article. I do wonder if drinking alcohol also helps to break them down. I mean, alcohol comes with its own negativity, but it is a fermented substance, right? So theoretically, wouldn't it also help to break down microplastics?
It could be that what they found was
either way
you'd have to drink. It would be
Yeah, I know,
the health effects would be negative the other way.
So,
That's probably what it is.
Yeah, probably. So either way, yeah. So this is a bit of good news, because in an age where plastic pollution is so widespread and uncontrolled, I mean, it's everywhere. As you know, I always go back to what you said the other day when we were recording. You said, I'm in this room,
right,
and 75% of this room is plastic. You know, it's like, yeah, it's in our foods, it's in the air, it's in the water. I mean, they recently did in Japan, they did a study where they found, they did cloud water samples on top of Mount Fuji, right? And what they found was that something like 8 of the 10 samples had microplastics in them. And they were like, yeah, this happened because essentially you have all this plastic rotting in the ocean, and it rises with the whole process of water getting dissipated into gas and rising into the clouds. And now you've got microplastics in the clouds, and then they rain, and you get microplastics in places that man isn't even there often. You know, you're getting it all over the place. It is spreading with the environment. So it's I often think to myself lately how it's not going to be a meteor or even like global warming that'll kill us. I think we'll pollute ourselves to death. But I hope we don't. I don't want to get all negative on this now. I hope that we will find a way to survive this kind of thing. I just think that the problem is that very often the solutions get turned into profits. You know, because recently I read. I'm reading too many our science journals lately. I should really stop. But I was reading a science journal recently where they were talking about how they have narrowed down that there is this one amino acid that in mice, if you reduce this amino acid by like a third, I think it's like 2/3, it raises the quality of life like tremendously and actually extends the lifespan of these mice, right? And what was fascinating to me is, how when you start reading a lot of about anything, you start to learn the ins and outs of things that people do and don't say. So I'm sure you've talked to a tech and had them talking about a problem in front of people who don't know what they're talking about, and been able to kind of figure out what they're saying in code as to how fucked the situation really is.
Oh yeah, of course, yes, absolutely.
Without scaring anybody. Like it's So this journal article I read, they were talking about this study, and they said essentially that it's this amino acid that you find in proteins, right? And essentially, if you cut down 2/3 of your diet of these proteins, that it can dramatically increase your health, right? But what I love is at the end, the pharmaceutical rep that comes in and goes, but we're not telling anybody that they should diet or try this because it still needs to be studied, and don't worry, we're working on a pill. And I thought to myself, you assholes. Rather than tell people, hey, we've discovered a better way to live, here's the method that you could do this on your own, they have a guy come out at the end and go, don't change anything, we'll get you a pill. We'll get you a pill so you can eat like pigs and still live a long and healthy life. We're going to make it so that you pay all that money for all that food, and then you're not even going to absorb 2/3 of those proteins because you're using our products. I mean, if that doesn't sum up the failure of modern day culture, I don't know what is. Like, that's something out of a William Gibson novel.
It's true, it is.
Yeah. Like, it is, right? But to move on to some good news, also out of Japan, but weird. They did a study recently with wasabi, and discovered that wasabi, when taken on a regular basis, can actually improve the memory. They found that they did a study with 60 to 80-year-olds where they gave them regular dosages of wasabi. Not like, eating big blocks of it, but like, pills of it. Because honestly, if you had to eat it, I don't know if I could do that. I like a little bit of wasabi, but the amounts that they have to ingest, it's too much for me. But wasabi is this weird substance, because did you know that it's antimicrobial?
I remember reading something about that, which sort of doesn't surprise me, I guess.
It's so weird that someone would figure out that the way to eat raw fish is to rub an antimicrobial plant on it. Which they've been doing for hundreds of years, if not more. Right? It's crazy. Like, sometimes the things that people discover, it's astounding. But yes, so this that they've discovered is if you have a regular dosage of wasabi day to day, it can actually noticeably improve the memory. And they were doing this study with 40, like I said, 60 to 80-year-olds. So I thought that was an interesting, a weird biological bit of good news. If you feel like your memory is slipping, get more wasabi into your diet, right? Although, to be fair, most of the wasabi in this country is actually horseradish.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't it actually tough to get real wasabi here?
Yeah, it is. I went looking to see if I could find any, and so far all I can find is there is a farm in North Carolina that exclusively does wasabi. You can buy it from them in pills. You can buy it from them in like raw form. But yes, otherwise a lot of people just have horseradish dyed green because it has the same spicy qualities. I should really look up to see if horseradish has any of the other properties. Is it also an antimicrobial?
That's the question: is does it actually have the same effects?
Yeah, so far, wasabi will help your memory if you eat it on a regular basis, and fermented foods will help break down the microplastics that you are inevitably ingesting. So, how to survive and get older in a polluted world. My last bit, though, is in the realm of the Cold War, which I know is an area.
Ooh, I do.
Like. So I now that my life is getting somewhat back to normal, although it doesn't feel that way. When you move and you've been living someplace else for a while, and you have that moment where you like walk through your house and you think to yourself, "This is not my house." Yeah. It's almost that Talking Head song where you're like, "This is not my beautiful. This is not my beautiful wife. Right. This is not my beautiful house." Where like you almost feel like I don't want to call it imposter syndrome, but you almost just feel like you're
intruding on something.
Yeah, you're somewhere else. I get that every now and then because it's very strange. But now that life is getting somewhat back to normal, I've gotten back to doing my my college lectures to continue my useless education. And I've been doing right before I moved, I was doing this whole thing about the history of the United States, which a lot of this is kind of rehash. It's a rehash for me because I've learned American history so many times, but I've actually done all these like individual courses. So I thought it would really just be like a rehash, so I understand. So I was about halfway through the course, and that was World War II. So I was like, great, I love World War II. I mean, it's not a good thing, but as a historical thing, it's very interesting. There's a lot of shit that went on. I started on World War II, and I was listening to some things, and I kind of found that this lecturer, this professor, he was taking kind of a different point of view of things, enough so that I was still learning things I didn't know, little things that popped up. And one of these things that popped up is that he finished talking about World War II, and he went into the Cold War. And he got into, the atomic race and mutually assured destruction and all that stuff. And he started talking about this thing that I did not know much about, and I'm still trying to do more research on the ins and outs of it. But apparently, during the Cold War, there was so much atomic testing. Right? Now we both know this because there's things like on the US side, there's things like Operation Plowshare where they were basically fucking nuking the basement just to see what they could do. You know what I mean? We've on some level we've nuked ourselves more than we ever nuked the Japanese. And
what people don't often know, is how much was going on, because at one point, just to, take the sinister end of it out for a minute, there was at one point a lot of thought that atomic energy would power everything. Cars and everything else. So they were testing everything.
Yeah, and Operation Plowshare,
because they didn't really know what was going to happen.
And Operation Plowshare was an operation where they were basically trying to figure out if they could move massive quantities of earth. Essentially, like, could you blow a mountain out of the way if you needed to, right? And in fact, some of the largest man-made craters in history are out in the Midwest, and are because of Operation Plowshare. But when they were doing Operation Plowshare, they usually did it out in the desert. But if the wind shifted, you suddenly had this atomic cloud of dust headed for a major city. And very often, they didn't say anything because they didn't want to get in trouble, right? So there was a lot of atomic testing, specifically setting off minor atomic bombs, right? And major ones as well. I mean, listen, there are islands in the Pacific that you still cannot go to that are so radioactive. But apparently, at some point during the Cold War, it was brought to the attention of the United States and the USSR that the background radiation of the world had increased. Mainly, they think because of the amount of atomic testing, that they had put so much atomic material and they had raised the radiation levels in the atmosphere, and that this can be directly attributed to the rise in all sorts of cancers, leukemias, all this shit. That if you time it, it all suddenly jumped right around the time all this testing got going. And after that, both countries seem to have made a decision to only do underground testing from that point on, because it's way better if it's no drinking water. And I heard this, and I went to see if I could find more information, and I found little bits of information, but nothing majorly direct. Like, I'd love to find the studies that actually cited this. There are studies about, radiation levels in the environment, and there are people who talk about it, but specifically in the Cold War, this idea that they were just, dumping radiation into the atmosphere without realizing it. It's fascinating to me, because this goes back to the whole thing about how, as a species, we're just killing ourselves. It's amazing to me that there is this kind of jump historically in cancer. Like, I think cancer has always been with us, but there is definitely a period in time where suddenly it got worse. And I wonder if to some degree we're still living in the fallout of the Cold War. That no, there was never actually a war, but that because of the amount of testing that was done, we're still living in a kind of a nuclear fallout. You know, it was a really, it was a weird idea that occurred to me, that looking at that and then looking at the world, you know, like maybe the post-apocalyptic doesn't look like what you think it looks like. You know, like you get into that. This goes back to the frog in hot water, right? How does the frog know it's boiling? You know, it'll get to a point where it realizes it's too fucking hot. But as that water steadily gets warmer, if you do it slow enough, right? You know, and if you look at kind of the world we're in, right, where you've got these rising temperatures and cancers and weird anomalies, and you know, then you throw in pollution on top of that. Maybe we are living in a post-apocalyptic age. Maybe Road Warrior was all wrong. Maybe part of the reason that you got people in power who don't really care about saving the environment or anything like that. You know, I always worry. This is like the post-apocalyptic science fiction part of me kicking in. Is that there's some crucial piece of information, you know, that I don't have, that once you were given it, you kind of look at the world and go, yeah, you know what? I don't care. Just live your life whatever way you want, because, you know, it's not going to get better. Like, you know, it's you read that book Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson.
Yes,
Isn't there something in that book where like the governments know about the moon before the people do? Or
something about that. Yeah, I don't remember the specifics, but I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, it's just that
right.
yeah, it's just that idea of people in power having information before you, and you wonder, is that to some degree why people in power act so fucking crazy? Because, you know, how does a psyche handle this idea that you are already living in post-apocalyptic times? You know, and like we have this fantasy image of what post-apocalyptic is supposed to look like. You know, my son had a school dance for the first time, and he didn't want to go. And he was like, oh, I don't want to have to dance. And I was like, why do you think you have to dance? I was like, school dance is just kind of like a get-together. And on talking with him, I realized that his only context for what a school dance is supposed to look like is from watching television and movies. And if you go by like, a movie or a TV show's version of what a school dance is, you know how fucking wrong that is. You know, like that's not what a school dance. That's ideally what a school dance is supposed to look like. But did you ever dance at a school dance?
I don't think so.
No, I went.
Not that I remember.
Yeah, I went and hung out with my friends and talked shit. Sometimes I had to get dressed up to do it. You know, but it's that idea that your vision of a thing can be shaped by your input. And if you're walking around with Mad Max in your mind, or, you know, The Day After Tomorrow, or, I mean, Stalker's post-apocalyptic, right?
Well, okay. No, I wouldn't call it that, because as far as I'm aware, the rest of the world is fine.
It's normal.
It's just this one
okay.
zone. But
the zone. Yeah.
But you could infer that it will lead to something.
All right,
so
yeah. But you see what I mean? Like,
yes.
we have this vision of the post-apocalyptic that's kind
Well,
of
I think we often think it's going to be very obvious and visible and in front of us. And in fact, what you're describing is an invisible apocalypse. One where things are going on, but you don't notice it until there's a certain tipping point, like, say, the planet burning up.
Yeah, like the temperature going up and people dying of cancer, and there being so much plastic in your food that it's actually causing your body to break down in all sorts of different diseases, and having it all kind of get swept up in the, well, you know, cancer happens. Well, you know, some people just get strange brain tumors. You know, like I don't remember like dementia being such a huge thing when I was younger, or you know, any like I feel like in the last like 50 years there's been all these like degenerative diseases that kind of have cropped up, and you kind of sit there and go, where were all these? And the argument has always been, well, they were always around, people just didn't realize it because of medical science, right? But then there's always that possibility, well, what if they weren't around? What if they were far more rare? What if we really have just polluted the environment to such a degree that it's overwhelming, but it's not so overwhelming that it's like, shit's melting, but, radiation in the environment, plastics in the foods, I don't know. It was a weird thought to have. And I was angry at first about the radiation thing, because I was like, Cold War fallout bastards. But on the other hand, I think it's always better to know, because if you know, then you can at least try to combat it. The worst thing is to not know. A movie like Aliens, if they didn't know an alien was on the ship, everyone would be dead.
Yes.
Right? And the whole idea is that having knowledge can help you. Whether it saves you or not, we'll see. But knowledge is the way to save you. And I'm not talking about this in some kind of weird conspiracy theorist sort of way where I'm like, oh, they're all calling out to get you. No, listen, it's documented. They set off a lot of nukes in the Cold War, right? They did it, like you said, to test out what it could do, what we could use it for, right? It wasn't all nefarious. Sometimes it was just stupid, right? And as far as plastics, plastics are everywhere because they're fucking convenient. Listen, I loved wearing stuff like Under Armour used to be like one of my favorite brands, because like their stuff is so stretchy and it never falls apart. I had Under Armour t-shirts for like 10 years because listen, plastic doesn't break down, right? But now that I realize that all these materials are shedding, it's like, well, I've tried really hard to kind of push these things out of my daily life where I can. But the bottom line is plastics are fucking convenient. And it's post-apocalyptic by convenience, isn't it? It's hard to get rid of something that makes your life easier. Hence the reason it's there. It's not nefarious. It's just convenient. And wouldn't it be funny if it was convenience that basically destroyed the human race in the end, wouldn't it? I guess we've said that before, because it's not like you're gonna get.
Well, that's WALL-E, isn't it? WALL-E
yeah. Oh
is
yeah.
I mean, it's just like anything else. Everything in moderation. Convenience in moderation is fine. Convenience as a way to live your entire life, probably not fine. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Overdependence on anything is an invitation for problems.
Yeah. Was it over-specialized in your breeding weakness?
Yes, that would be the Ghost in the Shell quote. Correct.
Isn't that terrible? That Ghost in the Shell line just stays with me forever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can't tell you how many people I've said that to. Have no idea what I'm talking about.
Course.
But it just works,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting kind of eclipse of different ideas and whatnot that I was looking at. I think for a while I turned away from the world and was trying not to get so into the sciences and the state of things. And recently, now that my life is getting somewhat normal again, I'm getting into my sciences and I'm starting to bring about the pattern recognition drive. And examining things, it's better living through awareness.
Sure.
So, the best part about this is that you live your life the way you want to, right? So, if you're worried about microplastics, for now, eat more fermented foods, or don't. I mean, that's the thing of convenience. You don't have to do shit. We as humans have free will, and you can choose to live and die any way you want. And I'm not even saying that kind of in a negative way. It's just you have the right to do this any way you want to, and you have the right to leave any way you want. So because I hate people who I don't hate them, but I hate when people show up and go, "This is bad. You can't do it. You can't do it." It's like, no. You can do it. Listen, smoking's bad. We know it's bad, right? But I'm not gonna get angry with
I
somebody.
will if they do
because
around
they
me
smoke.
because I don't want to breathe it.
Oh yes, that's different
That's
because
right.
that's
So, yes,
making
that's
you
an
a
exception.
part of it, right?
But if you want to drink
But
yourself to death,
but if
and as long
somebody
as you're not
wants
in
to
the car,
go
I don't care.
outside and smoke, yeah, well, as long as you're not someone important to me, how
well,
about
of course,
that?
but
'Cause
that's
then
what I'm
I'm
saying.
involved,
Is,
right?
As far as people's choices, here's the information. Do what you want, as long as it doesn't impact anybody else.
That's right, and I think we are entitled to have as much information as we can get, so that we can make sound decisions. I mean, that's kind of the whole idea. That was the whole idea of education and news and everything, is to try to educate the populace so that they can make responsible decisions. It's so that a lot of people don't want to make responsible decisions. I mean, it goes back to the whole Nietzsche thing. Some people want to believe, some people want to learn.
Yeah.
Right, and the people who want to learn and the people who want to believe aren't going to get along.
That's true.
So yeah. So like, it's funny because it is kind of a weird negative topic, and yet I don't feel that it's negative. I don't feel that we're fucked. I feel like the more we know, the more we can try to counter it. And the fact that there are so many, like the fact that these probiotics from these foods can possibly mitigate the effect of microplastics in the gut bacteria, that's astounding. I mean, that is something that already exists being there that can counter the effects of pollution. Well, what else have we got out there? I mean, I really do. Listen, I hate when people get into the whole intelligent design stuff, but I will admit there are times in life where I sit there and go, that's really convenient that works like that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
there is, and my brain doesn't go to intelligent design so much as sometimes I sit there and go, are we living in a simulation? Did they have to upload something to the game so that the players wouldn't all die?
I don't necessarily have a problem with the idea of intelligent design. I just don't attribute it to the same thing that most people do. I don't know that
of course,
God does not have to be a person sitting on a throne for me. It can be the force of gravity, and I'm fine with that.
It could be a tech lord developer from the sixth dimension.
It could be a natural force. It doesn't mean it has to be somebody making judgmental decisions on how things work.
Keep all the NPCs alive.
Kind of.
So I'm going to now completely switch gears on you. Because, well, actually, I just realized something. We never did our closing review of Baldur's Gate, did we?
I was actually going to bring that up. I was going to say we did not actually talk about the ending of the game. No. Yeah,
because I was going to talk about the fact that I saw, Black Adam, and that we started playing, Breakpoint again. But no, that all dims the fact that we never did our closing interview.
No, we did not.
Or was it exit interview?
Exit
That's
interview.
what they call it, right? An exit interview. Yeah. So, we have now concluded the game of the year.
Yes, I saw it one game of the year. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the game of the year?
I think it definitely, I have no issue with it winning game of the year. I think it was everything that I was hoping it would be in terms of the storytelling. I'm extraordinarily pleased that I can envision at least 2 more playthroughs of it in different ways, depending on what we do and how we play it.
I mean, and the number of people that you play. Because, I mean, Jesus, we didn't even scratch the surface of at least 3 of the characters. Four or 5.
All
what do you
call it? The built-in characters, we only had them as secondaries.
Yeah.
We weren't playing them as mains.
No, we weren't.
And even then, we largely, if not entirely, except for a couple of very specific exceptions, stuck with the same people the whole time. So we weren't shifting companions around very much. So we, even as a secondary, we only 2 out of 10 total.
Is that
well,
really?
because you have to count Halson, I think, could travel with you. Jahira can go for a while. So depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. Well, Jahira will stay with you till the end. We just
Right.
couldn't hold
Yeah.
on to her.
So there's Lazel, Shatterstar, whatever her name is, Will, Gale,
Starscream,
Karlak, Asterion. That's 6 right there, right? Who am I forgetting? No, I'm forgetting somebody. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting somebody. Well, then Halcyon, the guy that we ended up getting killed, who I believe can join you. Yeah, so that's 2 more.
The bald guy.
That would be 8 right
the
there.
Bald
And then
guy
Jahira's 9.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Volo can travel with you. Did we ever get that option? I don't remember. Okay.
No, he doesn't know. He's
9.
always in the camp.
Depending, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of storytelling therein. And the number of endings. I mean, now that we're done, I've kind of glanced to see some of the variations. And Gale, just the number of there's 3 endings of Gale different than the one that we got that are so wildly out there that I'm like, holy shit. I was like, damn, we I feel like we missed out on a ton of shit with him. So, I've already decided that I'm playing the next playthrough as a nudist bard. I just haven't decided yet whether I'm going to play a built character or turn one of the storyline characters into my nudist bard. Because what I really envisioned was a giant bearded orc who never wore clothes, just made everybody uncomfortable and played a guitar.
Yeah. Hey, people do it.
Because I personally think that would be hilarious. So yeah, we'll see. I wonder if you could play through the whole game without ever wearing not wearing armor or clothes, not. Without, can you with no bonuses?
You will still get bonuses. You get them from. I mean, if you literally wear nothing.
No, but you wouldn't without any.
Yeah, you would still get it from the
nothing.
weapons.
Yeah, no equipment bonuses.
So, and spells you could cast shields and that type.
Yeah.
I mean, you could.
So,
if you architect it right, I imagine it's a very difficult playthrough, but I think you could do it. Hold on.
But that's what I love about this game is that there is this element of design on the player's part where it's not just what the game does, it's what you do with it. So it's how you strategize, it's how creative and clever you are. It's how you look at the way the rules are laid out. Cuz there's nowhere in the game that it tells you to blow people up. But Joe and I figured out early on that if one of us just keeps them talking while the other person sets up explosives, we could pretty much blow anybody up. We blew up a ton of people. If you count the number of bosses that we blew up and just pushed over the edge of the cliff,
the naked challenge.
That's almost all of them.
Somebody did it.
Oh, is it? Is it actually a challenge?
I'm looking at this. Yeah, they're just running around with nothing on. As far as I could tell.
What was the... What was the class? Did it says what class they used?
Well, it looks like they built. No, it looks like they made their own. This looks like a custom. They're Dragonborn. So what class? It was. It looks like it.
Oh, a nudist dragon.
What is it? Hold on, I'm looking. No, monk. Looks like it's a monk.
Ooh, because they deal barehanded combat.
So
you know what? I never thought about a monk. I gotta watch some videos on what the different classes play like. But that's the thing is, as long as you're willing to play it differently, because we could play it again and just do the same classes that we did, but there would be no fun to that. The whole idea is that now we know the gaming system. Let's go back in and try
somebody here
just
mentioned
major
and
see how it plays out.
Yeah, of course. A monk barbarian who wore nothing but Lazel's underwear. It can be done. We called him Gimpy. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, this is great. I created a main as a female druid and added druid to all my followers. We are the Druids of the Breeze, a naked druid cult of 4 women that fight naked. That's great. Yeah, so
you can become an animal when you're
you could be
a
zoology.
That's so great. That's so awesome. I'm getting ideas, and that's great. The fact that we have finished the game and we are now
this person
excited
basically says an
how
unarmored monk is not even that hard to play through this game. They did. Yes.
When we fought monks in the game, they gave us trouble.
They did. So there's your answer.
Those fuckers hit hard.
Of course they did.
Oh man, yeah, that sounds like fun. But yeah, I thought that it was so much better than I thought it was going to be. I was really worried because we'd tried playing Dead or Alive or whatever it's called. It was the one that came out before.
No, it was Dead Island 2.
Not Dead Island.
Was it?
It's not Dead Island. No, Dead Island 2. No.
Oh,
I'm
Divinity,
talking about
original
the other
Sin 2.
RPG we tried to play.
Yeah.
Divinity, yeah. We had played. Yeah, I mean, Dead Island did not impress me, but Divinity. We tried playing Divinity 2, and I was unimpressed, kind of with the way things were laid out. But in this game, there was just such an attention to detail and decision, and they tried to nail as many branches as possible for where it could go. I mean, there's shit that happened in that game that I was astounded that someone had thought to sit down and fucking code it. You know, and they recorded dialogue for everything and everybody. You know, random shit, stuff that make no sense. It's just there. I mean, that cat, that really confident cat that you talk to, like the fact that you can have animals speak, and they had to potentially give every animal the lines in the game. You know, on the off chance you might talk to them. You know, like it's just so nuts in that respect. So I totally believe this game deserves Game of the Year. It is for a certain type of player, so I'm not going to tell you that everyone should play this game. Because if you're a what do you call it, a first person shooter type of guy, you know, you like
Call
your
of Duty,
what was it called? It just came out. Call of Duty. If you're a Call of Duty maniac, this is not your game. You know, but if you like RPGs, this is your high watermark. It really is. I am excited to go back and play again, and to play it differently. In fact, the only reason we're not playing it again is specifically to give our brains a chance to A, rest, and B, forget, so that we can go back in not automatically remembering everything. But we still put
Something
in what, like
150
hours? Yeah. Yeah, I put 150 hours in this game, and I'm excited to go back and start from scratch. The only weird thing for me going back will be that I will most likely avoid a lot of the things that I did the first time around, because I've kind of got this idea of the narrative of certain characters in my head. So, like, I won't go anywhere near Karlach, because in my mind, Karlach's story is kind of linked to my other character in the game, which is why I have to do something so different that it creates a whole new narrative out of it for me, you know? I mean, the same with you, where you were talking about, you know, because at one point you thought about
Will is the
playing
main
the character of Will again.
And Gale is the secondary.
Who's your secondary
relationship, because they're both spellcasters.
But the thing is, you know Will's story.
I do,
that's the problem. Like,
but
you know it so
in many
well.
cases, Will was not the decision maker. So there is a difference. There is a difference there.
No, he wasn't. No, but I know. But the thing is,
you
are still the decision maker.
The other thing is,
so it really
I for a while
change.
Wasn't playing properly, where I was letting Will talk to people. So one of the things I'm really going to endeavor to do is to try to talk our way out of everything again. But better.
Actually, what really fascinated me in the tail end of the game was early on, my character Overmorrow, she had negative charisma. So, like, she was awful in the conversation, right? But at one point or another, we maxed her strength out. We maxed it out so far that she could virtually threaten fucking anybody. And it was such a weird way to play, because either Will could charm people or Overmorrow could scare the shit out of them.
Well, the other thing that I thought about was to play it as Will and Astarion, and make Astarion very, very, very sinister. Not evil, but very deceitful. And what
just
would
go with
Will's values do in contrast to somebody like Astarion? Could you make
with
these
a negative
two be
approach.
together? Could they ever be paired?
Oh, like a Dark Urge. Go like with Dark Urge.
No, not even Dark Urge, but just Will always came across as valiant and upstanding. Like, he was the noble warrior. Astarion, by all measure that I can tell, is devious and, you know, is basically Garrick from Deep Space Nine.
He's mischievous.
Yes. Well, I mean, beyond it. I mean, there are times where he actively doesn't care about people's lives.
I will say this. He is when you get to the vampire castle, you do find out some of the things he's done, and he is very monstrous early on.
So could those two ever reconcile and then be romantic? That would be an interesting challenge. Could it be done? But I wouldn't make Asterion bend against his kind of nature. Could there be a middle ground? I don't know. It might be worth it just to see them battle, like to verbally spar.
I can't decide yet whether I'm going to do it. I'm going to do like either a nudist bard or a nudist monk would be fun, but I still haven't decided whether I'm going to use only court characters. Because it would honestly, it would be amusing because Shadowheart and Lizelle hate each other, so it would be a lot of fun to make them into a couple.
Sure.
I mean, it becomes a giant narrative science experiment, doesn't it?
It does to some degree to see what characters can actually be made to do. Because there is a part of me when just reading the monk thing just now, where I went, okay, because one of the things about Will was, obviously, as a warlock, his spell casting, it gets extraordinarily powerful. I mean, he gets to an incineration event level of power. But if he can't rely on that, he's next to useless. I wasn't because I had range. But I don't want to just make him another ranged character. So could I make him where if his spells fail him, he's a monk and he can brawl? That would be interesting.
Read that somebody took Gale and made Gale into a rogue, and their narrative was the idea of Gale's character, who's a mage, it's a fallen wizard, has lost his magic and turned him into a rogue character, which in their head changed the narrative and made it far more kind of like poignant for them. Except what's interesting is apparently they have recorded lines specifically for when you respec characters to different classes. And they were saying that the shit Gale's character says when you're doing like roguish thievery stuff is hilarious. Where you'll do something and he'll be like, "I think this is illegal. I shouldn't be here." And like it gets almost Monty Python-ish, with the things he says. I thought that was really funny. And again, goes back to this idea that somebody sat down and said, "Hey, what if they respec all our characters? We should probably record some dialogue for that." It's like it's smart. I mean, I would love a sequel to this game. They have hinted. I mean, the last big patch that came out was a whole epilogue that hints at more material, right? I mean, the one character Withers specifically says, "Well, you may be called on again." I would love a sequel to this game. I don't want it anytime soon. I want them to take their time if they're going to make another game, and I want them to make it better.
I think when you have a game like this you would hope that this would be the best possible position for a developer with all the accolades, with all the sales.
Yeah, don't rush it.
Well, that they would have basically free reign to make the proper sequel. You're just like anything. You're in a position of strength typically when you can say, "All right, our last thing blew up everything." So now that's really, if you look, this is the Rockstar model. Why is Rockstar able to take however many years to make each Grand Theft Auto? Because every one sells through the roof. Well, and you would assume that Baldur's Gate 4 will have a lead up and pre-sale anticipation. I'm actually going to buy the physical copy of it that they're getting ready to release because I want to support it again.
Really?
Having a physical copy.
They're doing a physical.
Yeah, which
how
again
many
they wouldn't have done.
How many discs is that going to be?
No, I think it's. I looked. I think it was just one. But hold on, let me check.
Is it?
Take a look. I think so because don't forget that the Blu-rays that they can hold a lot of stuff. Let's see, Baldur's Gate, the physical one. Here it is. Deluxe edition, I believe, is the physical. Yes, here it is. It is 2 discs. It looks like.
And
you're right.
And what, pray tell, is that going to come with?
Comes with 32 stickers. I do love stickers. Let's see. It comes with 32 stickers, a Mind Flayer poster, which is pretty, although I wouldn't have no use for it. Very nice box. The original soundtrack, 3 discs, which it does have good music. 2 patches, which I'll probably never use.
I hope the Raphael rap is on there.
Oh, you know what? I can't really make out. I'm looking at the image. It's hard to tell what it. Oh wait, here's the soundtrack. Wait. Here it is. Let me look. Oh, you can't click on it because it doesn't show you.
Because I mean, really, that's the track you want. That you,
Yes,
you want
so
that playing in the background.
It's 2 discs, so yeah. So yeah.
Hey, I think it's fantastic that they're doing a physical release.
Yeah. And it's not even.
But
I mean, it's not ridiculous. The PS5 thing is $80 for all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's not bad.
I think it deserves everything it gets. It's a fantastic game that we will play again in the near future. Which brings us to the fact that Joe made the decision that we went back to Breakpoint.
Yes, a much different Breakpoint than we were used to. That's for sure.
Yeah, and what's amazing is that the reason we went back to Breakpoint is the reason why Breakpoint was so ridiculous in the first place. Which, we talk so much shit about, what's his name, the actor, the Punisher.
John Bernthal?
Yeah, John Bernthal. We talk so much shit about John Bernthal's performance as Walker in that game and how ridiculous and kind of stupid it was. And yet, we keep coming back to it. He has become a permanent absurdity of our iconic, a map of characters, right? There are still inside jokes that go back and forth between Joe and I that are all because of Bernthal and his performance. Yeah. And in fact, it is Bernthal that lured Joe back to the game.
It's true. I must admit.
Because you just wanted to have some more of that absurdity, right?
I did. I want the joke. Yeah. Yes.
And on top of that,
the joke of him,
we've been given what feels like a totally different game.
Yes, they have essentially removed the thing I hated the most, which was what was that other game?
The gear score.
Thing.
The gear score system.
Yeah, it's now optional.
So for those who don't know what the gear score system is, essentially in the game, in the Wildlands, it used to be that you picked up gear. All the clothing that you picked up was just for how you looked, and really all that mattered is the specs on your weapons and your tactics, right? And you could upgrade the specs on your weapons, but otherwise, you take a shot to the head, you're going to die no matter what, right? And then you got bonuses in your characters that made it so that you either were harder to kill, or you could take a few hits to the head, shit like that, right? So it was your leveling system, not your gear, that made you. And then they did that was not the Divinity. What are they called? The Division. They did Division 2 which was a beautiful game, but it's kind of a virus shooter that takes place in Washington D.C. And they had this gear score system where essentially, on top of your gun's specs, there was this second thing where every item had sort of a weird arbitrary number, and you needed the highest number possible to be able to fight certain people. So it almost was like an extra level of leveling, and it made it so that you couldn't hold on to gear because you were constantly trying to up your gear. So you were constantly getting rid of guns, getting new guns, getting rid of clothes, getting new clothes, because you were just trying to boost your gear score, and it made it exhausting and annoying. And it made it so that when you played Breakpoint, you could never really get comfortable with a weapon because you'd have to get rid of it soon to get your gear score up. And then very often you find yourself hunting for the updated gear score version of the gun that you had, which was basically exactly the same, just had a higher gear score. And it was annoying and obnoxious. But it's strange to go back to a game and have them have done all this stuff to make it better for its replayability. So when we went back, they've removed the gear score. They've seemed to have streamlined a lot of elements of the game. There's stuff that just isn't there. Like in the original playthrough of the game, there were these there was this nanotech that wouldn't let you fly a plane above a certain height. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
And there was a quest to do that you had to. They got rid of that because they were like, "Fuck it, open the map up completely for them from the start." So we've had the map open once we walked in, and now you also have, if you play on your own, now you have a team. Whereas in the original release, you were on your own. But in Wildlands, you always had a team if you played on your own. So there's now a team. So there's a lot of stuff they have added after the fact. It feels like we're finally playing the finished version of the game. Isn't that weird?
I mean, it's weird, but at the same time, I think that Breakpoint is where it is because it came out and people did not want it. I mean, honestly, your point about it was essentially the Division with Wildlands paint on it. That's what it was. So, and it did not go over well because I think people who want to play Division will play Division, and people who want to play Wildlands 2, which is essentially what Breakpoint was. Whatever they want to say about whether they were calling it that or not, there's no way you look at that and don't see it as Wildlands 2, whether they titled it that or not. It was so similar in the way it worked that I think what they eventually did was like, okay, the only way we can make this work and have everybody like it is just to make it optional. I like the fact that it's an option. That's the way it always should have been. You want to play it with gear score, go for it. If you want to obsess over a +2 modifier on the barrel of a gun that's identical to the barrel of the gun you just had, knock yourself out. I can respect that level of OCD micromanagement. Believe me, I can. I just don't want it in this video game. So I think it should always have been an option. Do you want this to play fast and loose, which is essentially what we play it as, or do you want to make this into a scavenger hunt? If you do, go crazy. So I think every time we've played a game where you can customize options,
I'm honestly having more fun this time than
far
I did
more.
The first time we played it.
That's what I'm saying.
It also helps that we know that Walker is lurking.
Oh, well, yes, there's that. But every time we've had games where there are options, it's always been the best version of that game. We want to turn this on, off, whatever. We did it with Sniper Elite 5. That's the other part is we might get to a point where we want to turn something that we turned off back on. It's nice to be able to do that. It's great. I mean, I was messing around with the HUD options for a while, and I still might tweak them a little bit. And so it's always good to have options, especially when you're making a radical change to a game like that, which, again, no matter the thing is, I really think they looked at the fact that the Division for a while was very well received. And I think they mapped too much of that success to the gear score system. As opposed to, I think a lot of people like the Division because of the setting and because of kind of the way the game's laid out, but not the gear score thing specifically.
I enjoyed it because I was fighting through Washington D.C. and the landscape was so fascinating.
Yeah, no, it was. That's what I'm saying. Is that's the appeal. It's not the gear score. I
Yeah.
don't know a lot of people who have said I love gear scores. In fact, I've never met anybody. So that always
it makes no sense because unless you're gonna put a lot of emphasis on the equipment, right, and the specificity of the equipment.
Yes, and the way to do a gear score, in my opinion, it's just me. I'm not a game designer, developer.
But a gun is a gun. So unless you're improving the gun itself,
that's one of the things I liked about Wildlands was that you had the boss guns that dropped were unmodifiable. Those were special guns that worked a special way. Yeah. And they typically had a massive advantage and a massive disadvantage. And you played it or you didn't. That was it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the way you do it. If you want to do gear score, the way you do that is you have a gun, a bare metal gun platform, and the parts are the gear score elements. And they have bonuses and disadvantages. And you can decide that. Or you can just build the gun and use it the way you want to. Yeah. And you can make that, a certain way of unlocking abilities or whatever. You can do all that stuff.
And without the gear score, it becomes more about your cleverness and your skill.
Yes.
Because you know what? Listen.
We still got wiped out by the wolves. Not like we suddenly dominated the game.
I love to stab people in these games. Like that is kind of the big joke with the two of us is that you're the sniper and I'm the go in and stab everybody. And it's hilarious because, Joe's trying to get headshots around me and I'm just running around just trying to stab as many people as I can.
Or more hilariously, when I suddenly fall off a cliff and I'm trying to climb up and all I hear is I'm just like, okay, there's going to be nothing left for me when I get up there, right?
Okay, the dialogue is not as good as Baldur's Gate 3. That's just a given, right? But the sounds they make when they're dying, some of them are really funny. It really is like somebody they recorded at the end of the night being like, okay, this is screaming death from stabbing 303.
Yeah.
No, you're just
yeah. That's true.
It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's war porn.
Yeah,
and that is nowhere more evident by the fact that Joe is going to shut off so in the game there's a center hub, and in a weird thing, well, it's not weird because they wanted to encourage people to play with other players. And I think that's why they didn't give you a team in the beginning, because like Division 2, they wanted to encourage you to play with others. So there was no team because they wanted you to have to play with people. And the center city, or the center hideout called Erewhon, is where it is essentially a multiplayer hub. So when you go into Erewhon, it's the only place in the game where you see other players just walking around. You can't hurt each other. You can't do anything to it. You're all just there, picking up quests, buying equipment, and sometimes you can group up. But what's funny to me is that Joe and I showed up in Erewhon, and we looked around, and I said to Joe, "Man, I don't think we fit in here very well," because everybody was dressed in like these intense military costumes with like night vision goggles and all this crazy shit to make themselves look so fucking intense. And then I had taken my uniform and changed all the colors to make myself look like a weird broke-ass tactical Spider-Man. And you look like Snowjob from G.I. Joe. I mean,
yes,
if you took Sylvester Stallone and Snowjob and kind of mashed them together, it was very funny. Like, you were all dressed in white. You were like the woman from Matrix.
Kinda, yeah.
And the two of us were kind of standing there, and we're just looking around, and we were like, "Yeah, it's like you guys are taking this too seriously." But maybe that's our whole approach to these games. You're taking it too seriously.
Well, yes, there is that. I mean, and that's where, when you talk about the hub with all the people, I think that you and I, neither of us are military. Maybe there, and I have a hunch that there are people who are ex-military who jump into these games, and they can just jump into a random game with somebody else who's ex-military, and they just get along, and they're like, okay, here's how we're gonna do it.
Yeah, and my wife was actually saying to me that she knows of military people who play games like this.
I know there are. I know
they basically suit themselves up like they were actually doing.
Yeah, and that's what you see in the game. There's a lot of people who are. We were kind of making fun because there are people who just pretend that they're military. They read about it, but they would never, ever step foot into any battlefield ever. And then there are people who are, and for some of them, I know it can be actually therapeutic. It's a way to kind of get back to something that they miss. And there is, these are probably people who serve together and they may live on different parts of the planet, but they can get back in here. And, so I understand it. It's just not for me. I don't ever need anybody else in the game.
We are definitely at the wrong party.
Yes.
I look like I'm on my character looks like he's on his way to a cosplay convention.
Yeah, that's really what you look like.
It's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yes, Breakpoint, like
it's a different game. It's a different game.
Late in Breakpoint's life, it has become a very fun game, which is so strange.
Well, it validates once again my whole thing about wait to play games till way down the line, because you never know. They might be way better. I mean, Cyberpunk 2077, I'm going to end up playing it now because it's been utterly fixed, and it now runs a lot better, and I'll wait, and it'll probably go on a Christmas sale for half price, and I'll play it.
I want them to tell me that it's going co-op, and then I'll be very happy.
Yeah, if only. No, I'll play. I want to play it for the atmosphere, but I'm very happy I waited. I'm very, very happy I did not play it before now.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it happens. I mean, was it No Man's Skies like that?
There's almost no game I'm going to buy right away anymore. Baldur's Gate was an exception because it was out on PC already, so it wasn't really new. It was new on consoles, but it had been out for over a month, and people were glowing about it.
There were plenty of reviews of it at this point.
And Assassin's Creed Mirage had really good reviews, and I knew what it was, and I knew it was small, which also benefits it because it tends to not have as many problems.
Yeah. And
sure enough, that game, I've run into no bugs that I can really think of. No problems with that game because it's very small. And it's great. So with big games, it pays to wait. I mean, I gave up on Starfield. I feel stupid for buying that game at full price. That was
Did you really? I didn't know you bought it.
Yeah, I did. Remember because I said I started cheating at it and I was having more fun.
No, you didn't tell me.
Yeah, so I bought it. I was trying to figure. I just never felt the urge to play it. And then I basically cheat coded the hell out of it, where I upgraded all my guns, everything else, and then I was having fun with it for a while. And then I came to a point where I'm like, there's no story. There's nothing to do in this thing. You go to planets and they're empty. The main storyline is, it's not bad, but it's not compelling. I never missed playing it. And so I finally just went, what am I doing?
And that's a weird thing, isn't it? That right there, I think, is the telltale of a really great game. When you actually, some point in your day, stop and think, oh, I miss playing this right now. I want to be playing this right now. And I'll tell you this, Baldur's Gate 3 is probably one of the few games in a while that I missed playing, that I wanted to be playing.
Yeah.
And I always knew that I was playing it way too late.
Well, that was the thing with that game. Unlike a lot of our other games, you can't really at times stop that game. You can save at any point, even in a battle. You can stop and save.
I know, but we
never wanted to.
No, you're in it, and you want to finish the situation.
No, whereas Sniper Elite, which I also miss playing. We could be like, all right, we're at the halfway point. Let's get to a safe area and we'll play again tomorrow. It was fine. It was easy to do.
It was always about getting to a safe place.
Yeah, but that game is also very absorbing because you're just kind of like
creeping around. Yeah.
But yeah, with the other thing, you know what the difference is with Sniper Elite? This is a great example of what the key difference is in the battle schedule. If you shoot someone in the face, they're going to die. Yes. That's it. They're dead. You have won that battle at that time between you and that other person, whether they ever saw you there or not. In Baldur's Gate, one of the reasons you didn't want to quit was you didn't know if the battle was going to turn around. Especially the losing ones. You were like, can we actually win this? Maybe
and occasionally we did, miraculously.
So, that's the draw.
There was a few late fights, especially where I thought we were
well,
done,
especially after some of them we wiped so badly the first time and then won tremendously the second time, which makes it is all roll of the dice stuff.
But almost freakishly,
Well, because there's dice rolls. Everything is dice rolls. So if the enemies can get screwed by bad rolls too.
Yeah, but also I think to some degree it's also the tactics. I think once you fail, some of these fights you go in and you're like, I've got this, and then you go in and you're like, holy shit, this guy's really hard, and then you're like, okay, we have there are fights in that game that I spent I would think about for 24 hours. Just the whole time I was like, oh, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do this? And I would get online and I'd be like, okay, I was like, I think I figured out how we can do this. Yeah.
This is now the plan.
And then hey, listen, sometimes the plans work.
I agree. They do.
I mean, listen, the dome of invulnerability, that thing will live on in absolute fucking legendariness. If I could get a t-shirt, I should commission you for art that just says, the dome of invulnerability, and see who catches on to that. That's a telltale shirt for someone who's played Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
Because that thing was incredible.
It was.
And just having those made everything possible. I would not want to limit myself by not using the dome of invulnerability, but I will try to be more sparing with it. But the thing is, if you've got it and you know what it does, why wouldn't you use it?
I agree.
When there are times when the game is so... I mean, if you're fighting a fucking dragon, you might as well have a dome of invulnerability. Because the dragon's not going to let up on you.
No.
Yeah?
No.
So...
No, I agree.
But either way, yes, we're enjoying Breakpoint.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see more of Walker and his bullshit.
Oh, me either. Yeah.
And you know what? When you play a game like this the second time around, you have a lot more room to breathe. It gives you more space to kind of think of other things. We discovered that the Jerky Boys made a new album in 2020.
Yes, we did. I believe that is recorded.
Oh, no. Did you?
I think, I record everything in case it's good. So, yeah.
I think it's because one of us kept going, oh geez.
Well, remember the guy? The guy sounded like Frank Rizzo.
Oh yeah, he sounded like
yeah. You said this sounds like Frank Rizzo, and that led to yes.
There you go. I expect the review of that at some point.
Oh, you'll get it. Don't worry. Yeah.
So I did you have a review?
I do. Yeah, I do. I have a review. All right. So
okay.
I did not intend I often start my reviews out this way because I sometimes wander into things not realizing what I'm going to be getting into. So I did not intend to do another gonzo wacko film after Forbidden Zone so quickly. But I watched I will read the description, a 1989 American avant-garde horror erotic film.
Ooh.
Titled, okay, well, don't get too excited. The erotic part is oversold.
Damn.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some weird stuff, but it's not... Okay, when the movie starts, you will think, okay, this might actually be...
Yeah, and that's the thing. Whenever you say, like, horror erotic, my brain thinks, like, Antonio Banderas and Brad Pitt in the Interview with a Vampire, where, like, there's this...
Oh, no. This starts out where you might think it's actually going into Caligula territory, which is basically a movie that did feature pornographic acts by porn actors. Like, there's real stuff in there. This starts out, and you'll think that because you see a woman masturbating to a TV image of herself licking her lips, and you go, okay. And I mean, I don't know if she's actually doing anything, but her hands are down her underwear, and she's completely topless. So it's possible at first.
Has an itch.
Yes. And so when you start off with that, you think, oh, this might actually be a porn film with horror elements, which do get made. That stuff exists. But it is not. So I will say, you don't expect much in the way of...
Yeah, when I hear erotic in movies like that, it more makes me think of, like, erotic tension.
No, this is silly sex stuff. So
silly sex.
The film's name is Dr. Caligari. And if that name sounds familiar to people, it's because there is a classic of 1920s, I believe it's German.
The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yes, exactly. And this movie is positioned as a sequel to that.
What year is this one?
1989. Now, this is by the same person who made Cafe Flesh, which I've heard of a lot, but I've never seen it. It's kind of an infamous cult. Again, kind of erotic, whatever movie. Never seen it. But
is that Susie from Susie and the Banshees?
No, that actress only did 2 movies. This one, and I think the other one I saw her in too, now that I think about it. What was the other one she was in? Let's see. She's never. I got to go to the IMDb page to see. I think she was in another movie I've seen, though. She's not a particularly good actress. I can understand why she only did 2 movies. Oh, no. Space Mutiny, which is a terrible, basically, I don't know. It's an assembled film. It has parts. It's got Battlestar Galactica footage reused in it. It's not good. It's not good.
Well, I'll tell you, the images of this movie are fascinating.
Okay. Do you see any pictures of the flesh wall with the tongue and the girl?
The giant mouth? Yeah.
Oh boy, let me tell you, some of the actual effects are amazing. So it occurred to me at a certain point in this movie that this is an alternate universe where this movie comes from an alternate universe where David Lynch and David Cronenberg got together.
The cake.
Oh yeah, they got together and made a sex film, a psychological horror, a psychological thriller sex film that was colored and the set design was all by like a Bauhaus designer because the colors are
I could totally see that.
Yeah, it's very bright and garish, which I love. That's great.
Very 80s, yeah.
Very 80s. Yeah. So there is now, unlike Forbidden Zone, which barely has a plot, this does have a story. And it is a story you can follow. It does make some sense, but it's also clearly just because they had this idea of stuff they wanted to do. So the movie starts out and we see this woman, and this woman is sitting in front of a television where it's talking about sex and desire and lust and blah, blah, blah. And I'm pretty sure it is her. It's hard to tell because the audio, this just got released on either Blu-ray or 4K, but I watched it on a YouTube channel, and the audio from that, it may just be this bad. It's very hard to understand what the TV is saying, but it's clearly supposed to be salacious and, seductive and whatever, because she's licking her lips and flicking her tongue. Like, it's not subtle what's going on. And the woman eventually responds by, as I said, stripping and then getting herself off in front of the TV. And then we get a phone call from her husband to the Caligari Insane Asylum, which is short letters CIA, which is hysterical. I don't know if that's supposed to be a joke or not. And this is the conversation between the husband, whose name is it's something Van Houten. I don't remember what it is. I think it's Lester. There it is. Lester Van Houten. And the titular Dr. Caligari, who is the Susie and the Banshee-looking woman on the cover. So I will play that exchange right here.
CIA.
That you, Dr. Caligari? This is Les Van Houten. We got to talk about the missus.
Of course, Mr. Van Houten. How can I be of service?
She's slipping again.
Ah, I was afraid there might be another episode.
But this time it's worse. She's worked herself into a complete frenzy. She's got to be sedated.
Mr. Van Houten, if you want your wife to rediscover pleasure, you've got to learn to just say yes.
But last time she almost didn't survive. And the scandal, I can't deal with another episode like that.
Perhaps I should prescribe a sedative for you.
Now, just hold on, sister.
He thinks I'm dirt. Meanwhile, one look at me and all the tiki boys get drooly. Want to touch Buster?
Wait, I can hear her. I swear I can feel her heat from the next room.
Get a grip. Try and remember. How many times she reached her plateau?
If you're talking about orgasms, I ran out of fingers.
Clitoral vag.
I don't know.
Single or multiple?
I don't know. Damn it, I'm in a situation here.
It's important. Did she have more than one orgasm, or did she just have one?
I said I don't know.
I know I'm not alone. They pick my bones. They sniff their fingers. They howl.
For God's sake, she's raving. You got me into this, doctor.
They plant things in my Louis Vuitton valise. While you sleep, they inject things. The libido patrol, regulating, you only think you sleep.
Yeah, so you can already tell what this is. So this is the setup, which is this woman.
This is a ridiculous movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that woman speaking, you can see why she didn't do a lot of films. This is the level of acting. She is never very smooth in her delivery. But essentially, I assume they never say.
But you know what? But she looks like a God.
She looks great.
The Duran Duran album cover.
Yeah, the real woman. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look.
What's the artist's name?
Hold on, it's behind me. Hold on. It's Nagel. Peter. I think it's Peter or David Nagel. Nagel.
Yeah,
Nagel.
She looks like a Nagel model.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Her look is fantastic. Like clearly, she was cast for looks, not for acting. Very clear. So I assume he's supposed to be a senator or something. They never really tell you, but the fact that he's so concerned about scandal and all that stuff makes me think he was supposed to be, and maybe they just forgot to write a scene where they said that he's a public figure or whatever. Or something, who knows? But essentially, she's a nymphomaniac, and so Dr. Caligari says, all right, you have to commit her to my institution, and I will treat her. And I'm like, okay. So at this point, I'm like, okay, what is this going to be? Is this just going to be, lesbian nympho house party 4 or what? What are we in for here? But it actually is not. Like I said, after that initial couple of scenes, it really never gets back to anything like that, or at least that far into it. And so then we cut into the actual institute, where the head of the institute's name is, what's that guy's name? Dr. Avil, A-V-O-L, so like anvil without the N. So Dr. Avil, who has a daughter and son-in-law who are also psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever they are at this thing, who are very concerned about Dr. Caligari because she's doing human experimentation and they're not happy about it. And some of this cannot possibly be conveyed in either the sound clips or my description, but they have this way of speaking where it's almost as if they're of one mind, and they're doing this very voguish kind of movement where it's very, Dr. Caligari's always got her arm up with the cigarette like she's posing. It's all very strange. That stuff reminds me of Forbidden Zone because it's very art house
theatrical.
Weirdo type thing.
Yeah, it's very theatrical.
Very theatrical, yes. Very kind of Monty Python crossed over with Rocky Horror type thing. And so they're very concerned, but Dr. Avil's like, hey, this institute's named after her and her great-great-grandfather, who is, of course, the Caligari from the 1920 film. And, and she gets results. So as long as she gets results, I really don't care. But they're not happy about it. And they're like, okay, we're going to keep an eye on her. So there's the subplot where the two of them don't like what she's doing. And, but we don't really see what she's doing yet. And then we get a magnificent scene where we see one of her patients. And the guy who's playing her patient, this guy has been in stuff. I have seen this guy. I didn't look him up, though. Let me see what this guy's been in. Because I very vividly know his face from something. He has a very distinctive look. What is his name? He would probably be, is it Cesar? Jeez, I'm mispronouncing his name. I know this guy's face. His name was, oh man, what was his name? Oh, whatever. I'm not going to be able to find it, so it doesn't matter. I'll find it later. But anyway, he's got a very distinctive look. He's in the picture, so you probably saw his photo. He's the guy with the big kind of hair.
Yes, he's in the patient outfit.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and you see the brother and sister are in the photos. Those two in the yellow jackets. Those are the brother and sister that the children.
Oh yeah, definitely check out the photos, people.
Oh yeah, you really should, because watch the movie. Watch the movie because it is bonkers. I mean, this is actually a perfect double feature for Forbidden Zone. Holy crap, these two movies would go together great. Except, as I pointed out, I think in my short review, no offensive elements in here outside of the fact if you don't want to see breasts throughout the whole movie, then that will be offensive to you. But there's none of the problematic elements that Forbidden Zone had. This, amazingly, has none of that. It's just off the wall. So they're, as I said, watching Caligari, and then we get the scene with that patient, the guy with the big hair, and we get an explanation of what his deal is and what her treatment is, and this might be one of the best clips I've ever played in terms of raw insanity. So let me just play it with no further setup.
The diagnosis, acute dissociative. Recommend electroconvulsion therapy.
ECT, my favorite 3 letters in the alphabet. E-G.
You enjoy shock therapy.
I like the tingle. Juice me, I'm a shiver boy. I got secret needles in my pokey globe.
You've implanted needles in your buttocks?
Pins and needles. The shiny kind. I'm riding a zillion happy bolts. Wanna see?
You've dreamed of this, haven't you?
Oh, like forever. In my dream, you strap me in the big chair, okay? You push me down, and I go like, whoosh, them sewing needles. Then you sneer at me. Then you turn the power on till it makes me squeeze like a little bunny with a car antenna stuck plumb through its beating heart.
Edible hysteria, Mr. Pratt? Pathological daddy lust? A little cognitive dysfunction. But we're not going to let that make us late for the parade, are we?
No, ma'am, I'm spunky. My pappy was spunky. Used to call him Bongo around the neighborhood, Bongo or Glug Glug, because every Saturday he'd give us kids each a nickel to Bongo his Glug Glug.
Histrionic, narcissistic, like birthday parties?
How'd you know? I love him. In fact, right now I'm going to sit in this here frying seat, squeeze my eyes right shut, and pretend it's you and me just a humming and a buzzing side by side, having a race like to see whose brain starts to smoke first. Look, Caligari, there's a puff coming out of your ears pretty as a mountain sunset.
Mr. Pratt, some pretty important souls have squirmed where you're strapped in.
Yeah, so that's
that almost sounds like John Waters.
That's exactly what my thought was too when that was happening. Is okay, this character, this particular character, sounds like, acts like, and feels like he's out of a John Waters film. Absolutely. There's lots going on in this movie. So this character becomes a central one in that he keeps popping up. So after that scene, then we get one where Van Houten calls again because his wife is flipping out once again. She has this long extended dream sequence with that flesh wall you saw where there's this giant tongue that comes out and it's licking her. The effects are fantastic on that wall. I mean, it's really good. So even though most of this appears to have been shot in a hangar, like the whole movie appears to be, it's never ever leaves any, wherever they shot this, they shot the whole thing. So
is the whole thing arranged like it was meant to be on a stage?
Kind of. There's never an attempt to make it seem real. In fact, the shots of the hospital, the institute, feel very, I mean, they're so fake, but they feel a lot like the hospital sequences from the, what was that show, the Gareth the Dark Place, the comedy show, where it's clearly a little miniature, and it's clearly that in this. But yes, everything looks like it's staged. That's fine. It doesn't matter. The whole thing has this unreality to it, which works fine. So Van Houten calls, says she's relapsing again, and Caligari says, okay, then you have to sign her over to me. You have to I have to have her for 2 weeks, and I will cure her of this. And Van Houten doesn't really want to do it, but agrees to because she is having this problem. And again, he keeps mentioning scandals and, this can't get out or whatever. And so he turns his wife over to her, at which point she comes in and she's kind of raving. And then it cuts to, as you said, it's a very staged scene where she's off to the left. There is a man who is a scarecrow and is wearing a fake hairpiece that makes him look like Dog Boy from the Liquid Television sketches. And then Dr. Caligari is over onto the right. And we get this exchange, which will be important once we reach the end of the film. So some of this will come back in the end. But I will play this clip where they are in this very weird scene where they're kind of talking to each other across a human scarecrow with weird fog effects and just random, I don't know, shrubbery and stuff in the background. So we get this.
I know you're watching me.
Welcome back, Mrs. Van Houten. I'm so pleased to see you.
I know you're watching me. I know why.
Of course. You're a fascinating woman. I wish to learn more about you.
There's much to be learned from a despairing shriek.
For instance?
That you can't trust doctors.
But you can't trust love.
Doctors neither love nor hate. Prophets, not sentiments, direct them.
Describe your life in 3 words or less.
Unending torment.
Elaborate, please.
Blankety blank blank.
Thank you for being specific.
What do you want from me? I can't love.
And sex?
A sideshow on a trip to the abyss.
Aren't we bitter?
Not at all. Even eternal hell needs an opening act.
How do I make you feel?
Oh, I'm delighted. I get a kick out of the 3rd degree from fucks and fascists. What's next? The rubber hose? A few jolts of electric shock to get me chatty?
Mrs. Van Houten.
I love psychiatry. It's such an innocent hobby.
Blah, blah, blah. I know just what it's like when a girl needs her prescription filled. Like the voice? A dash of the young Pat Nixon. A hint of the Raylettes. And a whole lot of you-know-who.
Go away. You can't fool me. I know your little secret. I said leave me alone.
Funny thing about desire. If it's not crude, it's not pure.
Now, I should stress, I have done no editing on these clips. This is how they're speaking with the and these are often uncut. I mean, this isn't that they're jumping around all the time. It's just the way they're talking.
That line, the sideshow on the way to the abyss.
Yeah.
That is probably one of my favorite lines I think I've heard from any of the movies you've reviewed.
Well, once in a while, like I said, there's
oh man, that's such a great line.
It is a great line.
Sideshow on the way to the abyss.
Now, by the way, again, as they're speaking, they're doing these weird body movements. So that obviously doesn't come through in the clip maybe, but you can almost envision it with the way they say things, that they're moving their arms and heads and like they're robotically. It's strange. And so basically, we get this whole thing where that's their interview. So I guess that's supposed to be a metaphysical or whatever embellishment of her being evaluated in either a room or in Caligari's office or whatever. Or maybe that's supposed to be literal. I have no idea. But as this is going on, there's again, the brother and sister are kind of observing what's going on and they're disturbed and they keep trying to convince their father that he needs to fire Caligari or at least stop her from what she's doing. And he keeps saying, nope, she gets results. I don't want to hear about this. And so they finally get exasperated with the fact that their father isn't doing anything about these experiments. And they go and they decide to confront Caligari directly. And we get this wonderful exchange between the brother and sister where you are going to hear, I believe, them finishing each other's sentences, the thing I was talking about, as they are smoking. Again, in like a what do you call it? Not syndicated. What's the word where they're doing things in rhythm? Synchronized. They're synchronizing and like opposing movements. So one will smoke, the other's arm comes off. Then the other one will smoke and the arm comes off. They're like mirrors of each other. It's bizarre, but we get this, which is there is nice little wordplay and stuff in this movie, but it's the stilted, weird delivery and the physicality that really makes these scenes work. Because otherwise, they're just long scenes of people talking. But there's so much emotion, and they're all wearing bright colors, and it's just so odd that you don't get bored by the fact that it's a lot of talking.
Enter. How can I be of assistance?
You can begin by removing yourself from the Van Houten case.
And then turning over her medical records to Dr. Abel.
In the 9 years that you've been experimenting on living, feeling brains,
17 of your patients have been irreversibly
warped. Neural mayhem.
They can't be saved. Mrs. Van Houten can.
We intend to save her.
But Mrs. Van Houten is my thrill machine.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means put away your halos and crawl back to bed.
You may have Dr. Abel persuaded.
But we'll go to the APA, the Morality Board.
I'm so happy for you. Will there be a scandal, a humiliation?
You must produce Mrs. Van Houten.
We're entitled to interview her.
That would be nice, but I'm afraid she's up to her elbows in therapy.
Smile. We've got enough to mail you.
To malpractice land.
I'll tell Mrs. Van Houten you were concerned about her affairs. She'll be aroused. We must have dinner sometime.
Not likely, Caligari.
Don't you want to sample my culinary prowess?
I can't picture you.
In the kitchen.
I make a mean sheep trotter. The secret is finding sheep like you.
So we cut from that to then the head of the institute, Dr. Abel, and the two kids having dinner. They again try to convince him that something's going on, and they're eating the sheep trotters, which I guess is sheep legs. I don't know what trotters are, but the way I'm just going by context. But they're eating very, very obviously fake sheep's legs with big fur on them that they're kind of like shaving off and eating. It's a weird dinner scene to begin with. And so they're eating these legs, and they finally convince him that he should at least check on what she's doing. And so after this bizarre long dinner scene, we then get a sequence where the daughter has this nightmare about what Caligari's doing, and she wakes up and she says, I'm going to go down to the institute, and I want to, if I don't know if Dad's going to do anything, but I have to check. And her husband says, all right, we'll just be careful and, call me if anything comes up. In the meantime, we see that Caligari has now figured out how to extract the personality out of somebody and implant it into somebody else. And so she's got the guy from earlier, the shock freak. He is strapped down. So is Van Houten. And she extracts Van Houten's essence or personality out of her and implants it into the cannibal, where now they appear to be two people merged into one. So this person, the male body, has the personality of both the cannibal and a nymphomaniac. So he's now a nymphomaniac cannibal. And so as she's doing this, the husband, Van Houten, shows up. She grabs him. She's got him tied up with a little, a clown dunce cap thing with his mouth taped. And she's talking about she wants to try to implant, I think she's going to implant the Van Houten woman into him to make him a nymphomaniac as well, so that they'll both be nymphomaniacs or something. I'm not really clear. I don't know if it really matters. And so at that point, once this entire weird scene is set up where everybody's strapped down except the Van Houten. Oh, and she also swapped the cannibal into Van Houten. So now that person's also, so the female is now a nympho cannibal. So she's free and bouncing around, and then she frees the other guy, and then Aval shows up to see what's going on, and we get this where he discovers that maybe Caligari is actually insane.
Oh, Dr. Caligari, I didn't know you were working down here.
Oh, Dr. Abel, I'm very busy right now. Can we speak later in your office?
What's going on here? What is all this?
This, Dr. Abel, is the neurological event of the decade. Hypothalamus interfacing. The melding of two psyches with a single glandular squirt.
Commingling bodily fluids. And Mr. Pratt, Mrs. Van Houten, they've okayed this?
Petty concerns. It's typical when brain history's in the making.
What you're saying is impossible. Why, you're defying the laws of reality.
This is the only reality, and I write the laws.
And this one?
Yeah, her acting is not great.
He plays an important role. Psychodrama is a subtle art.
He wants to speak. Let him.
My dear Dr. Abel, it's best if we meet later when...
Remove the bandage, please.
Anything for a colleague.
Again, I didn't cut any of this. This is the way they speak and the pauses or lack of pauses that they're doing. So she takes the tape off of Houghton's mouth. He, of course, says, "Get me out of here. She's a lunatic. I don't want to do this." At which point, the female cannibal Van Houten pops up and attacks Aval, knocks him out, and then they do something to him, which I'm not really clear, but they essentially turn him into a woman, or at least a cross-dresser. So I don't know if the idea is that he had because I don't think they implant a personality. I don't think. I think it's just that he had a latent, almost like an Ed Wood thing, where underneath he always wanted to be a woman. So now he has either fake breasts or he's somehow grown breasts. This is Aval I'm talking about, the father. He's wearing a blonde wig. He's got lipstick on. He's talking with a female kind of connotation to his voice. And suddenly he is now Caligari's thrall. And so when the daughter shows up, she sees her father and he's, been transformed and she's horrified. And so she puts him into a gurney. She's trying to escape with him. Caligari's patients are trying to stop him. And then the husband shows up and they basically manage to overpower Caligari. And then the last thing you see is the female cannibal nympho grabs a needle and goes up to Caligari with it. And you see her jab her in the head with it, at which point the screen goes black. And then it cuts to black, the lights come up, and then we see Caligari, who is now in a cell, and the cannibal nympho female form. The male one's still there too, but he's just kind of bouncing around like a lunatic. But the female one is now somehow apparently running the Institute, and we get this kind of final dialogue, which calls back to the initial interview. So I will play that.
I know you're watching me.
Of course. You're a fascinating woman. I wish to learn more about you.
There's much to be learned from a despairing shriek.
For instance?
That you can't trust doctors.
But you can trust love.
What do you want from me? I can't love.
Describe your life in 3 words or less.
Unending torment.
And that's the end of the movie. So...
Okay.
Yeah. So basically it was this thing where she was supposed to be continuing experiments from her grandfather. She was doing brain swapping, and in a kind of classic twist, she is in fact brain swapped herself and is now a patient, where I think what is meant to happen is that Van Houten's wife imprinted her with, Dark City style, with her personality. And so now she is a miserable nymphomaniac in a insane asylum, and the nymphomaniac cannibal is now running the asylum somehow, and the brother and sister are nowhere to be found, nor the father. So I don't really know what happened to them, nor does it seem to matter. And that's the movie. So it's a lot of weirdness. It is, as I said, an alternate reality Lynch-Cronenberg collaboration with a dash of John Waters thrown in the acting department. It's a blast. It's not a good movie. It's not particularly structured with any type of logic, but that's not really why you're watching it. You're watching it for whatever it is. And in that way, it does deliver a unique experience. It is considered a midnight movie cult classic. I can see why. And it is entertaining, but it is really just, it's very close to Forbidden Zone in terms of they just wanted to do certain scenes. They didn't really care if it looked real. They were not worried about acting. Obviously, the script was not...
She's definitely not good, but she's got the look.
Oh, yes, she has the look, the movements.
Yeah.
There's none of the visual stuff obviously is captured in what we're saying here because it's all audio. But there is a heavy visual element to it with all the movements and the bright colors and the set design. And it has this very interesting look to it. It's never boring. And like I said, some of the effects are legitimately, no exaggeration, very good. That flesh wall, when they're moving, that tongue and mouth look great in action. They look fantastic. The organ cake looks very good. There's lots of stuff that looks great. And then simultaneously the doors all look like cardboard. You know, when they're touching things, the walls shake, all that kind of garbage. That's all happening too. So, but it doesn't really matter. This seems like a performance piece.
Yeah.
It seems like something by people who had scenes they wanted to depict. And it works fine as that. I had a blast with it, but this is absolutely not meant for a mainstream audience. This is a bizarro, technically it's an erotic film, I guess, because there is a ton of nudity in it and there's a lot of sexual inference and stuff like that.
But it's all heavy-handed and kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing that any horror movie you watch, there's more nudity in a Friday the 13th movie, honestly, than there probably is in this in total. It's just that you have those opening scenes where you think, oh, wow, this might whipsaw into NC-17 territory, and it never does. Because...
Yeah.
I mean, even Forbidden Zone, I think, might have more nudity than this movie in terms of what you're actually seeing. It's just that you open up with a double masturbation scene by a woman or a TV that appears to be trying to, eat her out virtually or something. And so, yes, that's gonna make you think it's going one direction, and then it never gets back to anything like that again. That's just kind of the opening, the she's in a frenzy scene, which is... It's never even approaching erotic. It's more hilarious because it's so weird. So, and there is no real horror element because none of these characters are threatening because they're not real. There's nothing real in this movie. It doesn't ever feel like it's supposed to be grounded in any type of reality. This seems like something that somebody on a massive amount of amphetamines doodled on a script page and they said, yeah, we can film that. We know art people. Let's make it. Kind of like Forbidden Zone. This is a drug movie. People were under the influence of a lot of stuff probably at once, and they thought that it would be a blast to make this movie, and they did. But as that, it is fun. It is memorable. You got a line out of it right away. A sideshow on the way to the abyss.
There's that. I will say that is some good writing. That is some good writing.
But yeah, this is the type of movie that you put on when you just want to have a good 90 minutes, worth of bizarrity. And that's what it is. It's nothing more than that. It's nothing less than that. And the visuals are, it's funny because I went from Forbidden Zone, which was black and white, to this, which is in high intensity color, to the point where at first, I think they just filmed it with all this color the way it was. Because at first I thought it was artificially colored. It's so vibrant and bright that I thought it might be like after the fact coloring where they do like the post coloring on it. But I don't think so. I think they just did the makeup and had the lighting in such a way because a lot of it looks too realistic. So either they did it really well, which is possible, or they really did just film this in a way to emphasize color as much as possible. So in that way, I really like it. I mean, the visuals are very striking. I actually do legitimately like the arm movements and everything. It has this choreography to it, which is clearly deliberate. And so if without the colors and the weird movements, I mean, there's parts where they're talking to each other and then they face the camera and say lines and then face each other and talk and then face the camera. So they're doing specific things. And that makes it a little bit better than if this was just a straight movie where if there was normal colors, normal acting, it would not, it would be boring. You'd lose interest halfway through.
Theatrically over stylized, it would be just a bad movie.
Yes. And the bad acting feeds into that. That main actress being as stilted as she is, it almost makes it intentional, as if she's supposed to be otherworldly. Obviously, it's not. I don't think, unless the people involved were taking advantage of her, which I hope would not be the case. I think it's just that she had to look, like you said, she looks very striking. And I think they probably wanted somebody who looked a certain way, and they didn't really care how well she could act there, because she's not the only one. I mean, the wife is not really that good either. Really, nobody is. Everybody's overdoing it to a large degree. Maybe the brother and sister are the best actors in the whole thing because they are coordinating their lines and they're doing a pretty good job of it. So they're probably the best. And he's playing it the brother-in-law, the husband, is almost doing a 50s Fred Ward thing where he looks like Captain Marvel kind of, and he's talking his lines like almost like, "Hey, how's it going? See, blah blah blah, blah blah blah." But I think it's on purpose. I don't think that's because he's a bad actor. I think he's doing that So they're probably the best ones in it. But again, everything kind of makes this movie where you're like, okay, this is barely holding together, but it sure looks interesting, and it's very different than most things I've watched. So in that way, I think it's very successful. Some people I could see watching this a lot as something to kind of just probably get high and watch. I could easily see that as this, for some people, this is a drug. Literally, they do drugs and watch this movie. Or as doing like midnight movie screenings with friends, where you get a couple movies. Forbidden Zone, this, a John Waters film, as you said, and you just run them on a weekend and you're just having a blast with people. This is definitely one of those kind of movies. As far as a straightforward movie, no, this is not a straightforward movie. This is for the right audience. I would say if you watch the trailer and it looks interesting, you will enjoy it. If you watch it and you go, I don't know, then don't bother. Don't bother, because there's not enough there for people who aren't into this type of film to get you past over the hump of I don't know. But if you watch it, you're like, oh, I need to see this as soon as possible. You're going to have a blast. It's one of those type movies. Again, Forbidden Zone, if you like that movie, you're going to like this movie, and vice versa. So this is kind of a retroactive recommendation for Forbidden Zone. If you watch this or know this movie and say, oh yeah, I love that movie, and you've never seen Forbidden Zone, go watch that, because this and that one are very spiritually connected. Perhaps they had their brains swapped with needles, and now they're both nymphomaniac cannibal films. I don't know. But yeah, fun movie. It is available on Blu-ray. I don't know if I'll buy it, but I'm going back and forth because it does have a real wonderful visual style that I don't really think I've seen. I can't come up with something else that looks like this. And just on that alone for me, I'm like, oh, that probably makes it worth having, because it has this very, very unique visual and kind of kinetic thing to it that's unique. I really can't think of something else I've seen that's like this in terms of its visuals and the way people are moving through it. And that alone makes it noteworthy. But I would, if anybody else can think of something, by all means, write into the show. Let me know wherever. Because I would be very curious to watch something else that's like this. And there may be a better movie that's like this. I just don't know of it. So I'm going to look around a little bit. Because
is a fascinating word. You're going to have to...
Well, no, what I mean is if there's a movie that has a better story to it. You know what I mean? If there's... Because there are movies that are similar, and there's lesser examples and better examples. You know what I mean? So those things do exist. There may be other movies made in this style that are movies that are more, that have a little more meat to them, I guess, than this one does. This one feels very thrown together, barest of stories. Still more than Forbidden Zone, which barely has, its story is next to non-existent. There's more here, but honestly, when it says it's a sequel to The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, it's not really. I mean, that's so minimal to the plot. It really doesn't have any... Although the visuals, see, that's where it's like, well, maybe they did think that, maybe they were meaning that in terms of the heightened visual style. And that, in that respect, it is interesting. So if that's what the real intent was, as opposed to the narrative, which does also seem to be fun, because she says, my great-grandfather was, the Dr. Caligari. So they are putting that in the narrative as well. In the narrative sense, it feels like a joke that they even attempted it. In the visual sense, as a 80s interpretation of a very stylistic method of filmmaking, yes, that is defensible. I can see that. And that's why I'm curious if there's anything else like this visually. I will look around because I am now legitimately curious about it, because it is a mesmerizing film in terms of its look. I just don't know if there's other stuff like this. If it's the only one, then I'll buy it, because I'd like to own something like this. But I also am going to look around and see if there's anything else.
Well, there you go.
So, like I said, watch the trailer. That will tell you whether you're in or not. Or again, if you've seen other movies. If you like John Waters, if you like Forbidden Zone, yeah, you'll like this. It's definitely that type of film. And on that note, that's it. That's all I have, because I don't know that I can top those clips this evening. So I'm going to, I'll just leave it at that. And on that note, enjoy your weekend, whatever type of entertainments you seek out in your trip to the sideshow on the way to the abyss. And we will talk to you next week. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @Ozone Nightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.